Regardless of who they would have selected in the 2026 NBA Draft, the OKC Thunder are still going to be expected to be at least co-favorites to make it to the NBA Finals next season. Nonetheless, after selecting two high-level prospects in the first round of the draft, the Thunder have just gotten even deeper, more versatile, and better equipped to make a run at the NBA title once again. First, with the 12th overall pick, OKC drafted 7'3" Spanish big man Adaiimara, the consensus best big man from the 2026 draft class, whose two-way impact on both ends of the floor was apparent last season, as he averaged 12 points and 67% shooting from the field, while also putting up 2.6 blocks per game for the national champion Michigan Wolverines. After which, OKC traded up one spot for the number 16 pick, which they used to select 6'3" guard Bennett Stirtz, who's arguably the best on-ball processor and shooter from this year's draft class, who did average almost 20 points and 1.4 steals per game for Iowa last season. Well, Sam Presti has always built Thunder rosters while giving premium and redundancy in depth, basically just allowing the team to have a surplus of everything, whether it be in terms of defense or ball handling. So if ever injuries chip away at one area, they're still going to be covered elsewhere. And again, this is exactly what they doubled down on in this year's draft. With Adaiimara, the Thunder added the third 7-footer on the roster alongside Chet and Hart, who would allow them to explore playing more big lineups. Then with Bennett Stirtz, the Thunder are getting an actual healthy true point guard off the bench who they can deploy next to the team's more scoring-oriented guards. So as good as the Thunder already are, they might even actually have won the 2026 NBA Draft. Even among the NBA super giants, Adaiimara's measurements would actually stand out, his 7'3" with a 7'6" wingspan and an almost 10-foot standing reach. But typically, players with those massive measurements tended to display limited skill sets at the college level. But Mara's definitely not one of those players. He's actually been an analytics darling because of how he was able to fill the stat sheet with all the many different things he does on the floor really well, which should be able to unlock a lot of things for the OKC Thunder on both ends of the floor. Let's first start with the basics. There's the interior scoring, and given Mara's size, it's not surprising that he was actually elite in terms of finishing at the rim. Last season in Michigan, he converted 76.8% of all his rim shot attempts in the half-court, which was the fourth highest mark in Division I basketball among all players to have attempted at least 100 shots at the rim. Mara also finished last season with 76 total dunks, which was the fifth most in Division I basketball. Though more than his size, it's actually how easy he makes everything look around the basket that's really been impressive, and which really makes his interior finishing look scalable at the NBA level. First off, Mara's technically sound as a finisher, and there's no big man in college basketball this year who's had a wider catch radius than him. When Mara catches an entry pass, he always keeps the ball high, and you would rarely see him bringing the ball below his neckline before dropping it in the basket. Or when he's rolling to the rim out of ball screen actions, he constantly opens himself up as a huge target for his ball handlers while being able to always easily elevate off the floor before finishing with a dunk. So with the Thunder, Mara could immediately step in as a lob finisher who just catches everything, whether it be at the post, off the pick and roll, or from the dunker spot. Basically, he gives OKC a real massive lob threat off the bench who could easily feast off the team's plethora of ball handlers and playmakers. But then, it's not just all about the size for Mara, there's also the skill and touch component in his interior game, as he's also shown the ability to unleash counters against defenders on the post. He's displayed good touch on semi-hook shots, and is also capable of deploying a little push shot when maneuvering and relocating around the rim. Well, the Thunder don't usually ask their bigs to create out of the post, so I don't really think OKC is gonna utilize Mara on the block right off the bat unless it's a way to punish a mismatch. But regardless, this post component of Mara's game should still potentially unlock a different side of the Thunder's offense, the same way Hart's floater has done the past two seasons. But aside from the interior scoring, Mara also brings extra value in the paint as an offensive rebounder. In Michigan, he averaged 1.9 offensive boards per game despite playing just 23 minutes per contest. Obviously, Mara's size and length helps with that regard, but he also just has a great nose for the ball when chasing boards, which helps him generate easy second chance opportunities, which skill should be very valuable for a Thunder team who almost always struggles to generate offensive rebounds when Hartenstein is not on the floor. But an even more impressive part of Mara's offensive game is his passing and playmaking. Mara is truly an elite playmaker at the center position. He's a wildly creative passer with terrific vision and a sharp mindset for how to get the ball to his teammates. Well, first, there's the numbers. His 18.6 assist percentage in Michigan is an elite mark for a big man, and his 1.2 assist to turnover ratio is actually the best ever recorded by a player standing 7'2" or above since college basketball started using advanced stats tracking. Well, I want to start out by highlighting how Mara's passing helps his team get out in early offense. Mara is a solid defensive rebounder who's posted an incredible 21.3 defensive rebounding percentage, which numbers were even suppressed given he played alongside two other good defensive rebounders in Yoxel Lendeborg and Maurice Johnson in Michigan. But regardless, once Mara secures a rebound, he's able to look deep down the floor and find teammates in stride with long head-to-head passes and some sharp cross-court reads. Although it's still in the half-court wherein the playmaking juice really shows up. Well, thanks to Michigan running a lot of modernized offensive half-court sets, Mara was able to show a ton of his passing versatility. Michigan ran a ton of sets wherein they deployed Mara at the top of the key or at the elbows, which is where he would find cutters or post players out of high-low actions. But also, when deployed on the post, Mara has stayed poised against double teams before spraying out timely dimes to cutters or shooters, and has also proven that he can operate as a passer out of short roll actions. While obviously, Mara's size and length allows him to utilize passing angles that other players are simply not able to take advantage of. But it's also that Mara has the ability to make quick decisions on the move. Plus, there's also some real craft with how he dishes out his dimes, as he does a great job of utilizing head and eye manipulation to bend defenses and further open up his passing targets. And lastly, there's also the creativity component that comes into play, as you don't always see guys this size comfortably throwing behind the back passes on the baseline or making wild overhand passes that finds his way to cutters the way Mara does. I can easily imagine him fitting in with this OKC team that thrives off having multiple playmakers on the floor at every position, but more importantly, with Mara, OKC should now have a big with elite passing vision and creativity off the bench who can duplicate iHeart's high-level playmaking, whether it be out of the short roll or out of the top of the key or even from the elbows. Which is why, despite Mara not being an outside shooter, his playmaking should technically still allow OKC to play sort of a semi-5-out offense with him on the floor, the same way they function with iHeart, wherein Mara would similarly act as a passing hub out on the perimeter, which should also ideally make him a solid fit in double big lineups next to either one of Chet or Jay Will, who are both capable floor spacers. But then, Mara's value on the defensive end is still probably the biggest reason OKC drafted him. Mara has been one of the most effective defensive anchors in college basketball this past season. As a last line of defense in the paint, Mara will just block any shot around his vicinity while being comfortable swatting the ball with either hand. He posted a 12.9 block percentage last season, which was a top 6 mark in Division I basketball. And again, his size is obviously a huge factor in all of this. First off, ball handlers are just cautious of going too deep in the paint when they see Mara lurking around. In fact, opponents took only 20.4% of their shots at the rim when Mara was on the floor, and that was a top 3 mark in all of college basketball. And when players did actually test him as a last line of defense inside, it didn't go well for them. Mara's length, reaction time, and hand speed just allows him to completely take away clean angles for shot creators, and in addition, Mara is also very smart positionally. He rotates well across the play in help situations, and he understands where his presence is most needed to throw off the offense. All of those qualities just make Mara a reliable last line of defense, and the numbers actually support that narrative, as opponents shot just 54.7% at the rim when Mara was on the court versus 60.6% at the rim when Mara was on the bench. Well, obviously, Mara will be interchangeable with Chet as a defensive anchor around the paint for the Thunder, but the reason I really see him thriving when playing next to Chet is the fact that Mara is also a solid defender out of ball screen actions, and being able to defend those actions will allow Chet to focus more on being a constant roamer and help side shot blocker, where he's actually at his best. Well, sure, as a screen defender, Mara's still mostly a drop coverage big, but despite that, he's capable of always staying within touching distance of both the ball handler and the roll man. Plus, he's just so big that he takes up a ton of space on the interior in a way that a big needs to in ball screen coverages. And while he's still not totally reliable against straight-up switches, Mara's not really cooked out in space either. While he's not the smoothest mover when guarding quicker players, Mara still makes himself as big as possible when guarding in the perimeter. Well, I still don't expect OKC to play Mara as a switch big, especially when they have more mobile frontcourt players. But I'm still actually optimistic with how Mara develops into at least a big who can thrive off soft switches in the long run, especially when guarding closeouts. As there were actually several moments in college when guys would pump fake and try to drive past him, but Mara wouldn't fall for it and instead slid his feet in space. And I love that Mara moves his feet reasonably well for a guy his size, all while keeping his chest in front of ball handlers before funneling them into a block. Well, sure, there are still some concerns about Mara's game. First off, he's not yet a reliable floor spacer. While he might have the touch to become a real stretch big in the NBA one day, as supported by the fact that he was able to drain some mid-range jumpers from a standstill in college, the thing is, we haven't really seen enough sample size to determine where he's actually at with his outside shooting trajectory, as Mara's only attempted a total of 10 3-point attempts last season while making only 3 of those. The shooting concerns also extend to the free throw line, where he's only converted 56% of his attempts last season. But then the thing is, even if the shooting doesn't develop for Mara, or even if he doesn't really become a quote-unquote Wemby Stopper with his current skill set, the Thunder at the very least are still getting a big body who's a high-level finisher, an exceptional passer, and an awesome rim protector who can be a real difference maker off the bench for them right off the bat. But if the other parts of his offensive game develops, then probably Mara could even grow into a long-term starter alongside Chet Holmgren in the frontcourt. Moving on, the Thunder also landed guard Bennett Stirtz, who I believe is one of the biggest steals of this 2026 draft class at number 16. Well, first off, Sturts stands 6'3" with a 6'6" wingspan, which is good size for an NBA combo guard. First off, what stands out to me the most is Sturts' high basketball IQ, which is reflected in his elite spatial awareness and court mapping ability, which should make him an immediate ball handling option for the Thunder right from day one. Sturts is a real floor general who gets his teammates the ball in the exact spots they seem to want and is always on target with his passes. But most importantly, even though Sturts almost always had a ball in his hands as Iowa's #1 option, it almost never stuck with him, as he constantly made early reads. If he sees someone open at the rim or in the corner, he'll throw a corner skip pass or a lob, and he's just comfortable throwing those kinds of passes using either hand off different angles, even while off a live dribble. But especially like Sturts' playmaking out of ball screen actions, where he's able to create open angles while displaying great timing and chemistry with his screeners. Sturts always sees how defenses react to a screen action and makes the right decision, whether that means throwing sharp pocket passes to his roll man, setting up someone off the pick and pop, or throwing skip passes to the wing or the corner. Well, sure, Sturts doesn't really make a lot of flashy passes, but the point is, he makes the right reads to get the ball to his teammates without disrupting the offensive flow. Last season, Sturts was just one of 34 Division I players to have a usage rate and assist rate of at least 25, while having at least a 2.0 assist-to-turnover ratio, and that is a testament to his reliability and effectiveness as a high-usage playmaker and decision-maker, which makes him such a great fit for a Thunder team who takes pride in taking care of the basketball. Though aside from the playmaking, Sturts is also a capable scorer who could step in right away as an additional secondary shot creator for the Thunder, and that part of his game starts with his unlimited range and his ability to generate shots from deep. Well, first, Sturts has great feel for when he has the space to pull up from deep, but he also loves to pump fake to get defenders off balance before taking quick pull-up three-pointers. Sturts has elite three-point shot creation, which shows up especially when he's operating, again, off-ball screen actions. A lot of times, Sturts would use the space between the guard and the big to confuse them before he dribbled back even up to 25 feet to fire away from deep. And overall last season in Iowa, Sturts converted a solid 35.8% of his three-point attempts on a high volume of 7 attempts per game. But the scoring doesn't stop there, as Sturts also uses the threat of his shot to constantly attack the rim where he's been an exceptional finisher. Well, sure, he's not the most explosive driver, but Sturts still has a very good first step and he has long strides which he effectively uses to cover a lot of ground quickly into a straight line to get to the basket. And around the rim, he's just so crafty, showing different types of finishes ranging from Euro steps, finger rolls, and some use of touch high off the glass. And overall, Sturts has converted 69.4% of his rim attempts at the half-court this past season, which is a really solid mark for a mostly below-the-rim finisher like him. But even when he's cut off on his way to the basket, Sturts is comfortable taking mid-range jumpers, wherein he's been adept at pulling up or pivoting into some tough fadeaway jumpers, and from the mid-range, he shot a solid 57.4% on 2 attempts per game last season. Well, obviously, we still have to see how quickly his efficient 3-level shot making could translate for Sturts to the NBA level, even at low volume. But the good thing here is that he's also a solid mover without the ball, which should allow him to function as an off-ball scorer right off the bat next to guys like Shai or J-Dub, who will be the ones who will mostly have the ball in their hands in OKC. When making slight relocations in the perimeter, Sturts can catch the ball and fire away in one motion. Plus, he has a quick and clean release off catch and shoots, which enable him to convert 45.5% of all his jumpers off the catch last season. But all in all, Sturts' ultimate fit in Oklahoma City will still depend on how good he will be defensively. And while he's not going to be asked by OKC to be a lockdown defender, he will be expected to be at least a cog within the Thunder's physical switch-heavy system. Sure, there are questions about his screen navigation, which is mostly brought about by his slight frame frame, but nonetheless, Sturts is a smart and active team defender. He knows where he should be all the time, he makes good rotations, and he always has his body angled properly when guarding in space. He's also an above-average defensive playmaker who's got excellent hands, which when paired with his excellent hand-eye coordination allows him to react to ball handlers and get deflections. And overall, he averaged a solid 1.4 steals per game for Iowa last season. Combine those traits with his good positional size for a guard, and I just can't envision Sturts being a minus defender for the Thunder by any means. And if you pair that with how well he already processes the game, given his high-level shot creation and playmaking, I expect Bennett Stirtz to be able to step in right away for OKC as an all-around contributor who could play a solid 15 minutes a game in a playoff setting, or maybe even more if injuries become a problem for the team once again. But overall, how would you rate OKC's first round draft haul this year? And if you want me to make a video about OKC's second round pick, hit me up in the comments section below. Again, this has been Rero Balls, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.